I'm Madeline Blair, and this is Unlocked. If you're that person who has goals that challenge you to fully reach your potential, this show is for you. Because this show is all about opening possibilities so that when you're hit with the unexpected, you have options from which to choose. Thank you for joining me today. Mystery Loves Company is a bookstore and maybe a philosophy. And today we'll be talking about it and some of the mysteries of the book industry. You know, telling stories seems to be a characteristic of humans. There's a deep human hunger to connect with others, to hear their stories, to get to know them, even when we've never met them or they only exist in story. Even today, there's a deep appeal to sitting down to read a great story. I always have these visions of a plump chair that I'm sitting in, that just cuddles me, and that book is in front of me, and I'm actually off in another space. You know, we also value knowledge, and when we obtain it, we want to remember it. Now, in my research, highly resilient people had in-depth knowledge of some area of interest to them. Today, I read a great deal of nonfiction books because I like to be able to make notes in the margins to reinforce my learning. And on top of that, there is increasing importance to constantly expanding our knowledge. I was doing some research some years ago, and I interviewed a wonderful man by the name of Bob Sadler. He's out in California, a well-known management consultant. And the amazing thing about his story was that, first of all, he really understood management. Everything he talked about was of all the latest books I had ever read on management. And so I said to him, how do you find time to read so many books? And he said, I don't. I said, what do you mean? And he said, Madeline, I read good fiction because you learn about human interaction by reading good fiction, along with other things. But I thought that was amazing. It said to me that fiction has real value to us. It enhances our knowledge too. Now, when I began researching the number of books published annually, the numbers ranged from 500,000 to 2.2 million, but those numbers didn't include self-published books. The numbers are uncertain, except that they are enormous. Those are annual numbers, by the way. Book publishing is a huge business, yet bookstores struggle to remain viable. What does a bookstore need to do to attract and retain patrons when Amazon offers so much for so little on our part? You know, I have about 20 cookbooks on my bookshelves at home, yet there are only about 3 that I go to almost every time. Why? Because I know that those cookbooks have proven over time that no matter what recipe I try, it will be delicious. They're the ones I go to first, even though I could find the recipe on the internet. That's good curation. Now, there's one thing that will always attract me to a store, and that's the immense value of someone you trust who will offer selections, otherwise known as curation. When they recommend a book, the chances are great that you're finding it exactly what you were looking for. All right, with that background, stay tuned because I need to have you listen a bit to a little commercial, but stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Unlocked. I'm your host, Madeline Blair. Our guest today is Kathy Harig, and I'm going to bring Kathy right on to the screen. Hello, Kathy.
Hello, Madeline.
Kathy Harig has been working in the library or bookselling business for over 55 years. She discovered she wanted to be a librarian after working in libraries in high school and college, and she received her Master's of Library Science from Catholic University in 1971. She was a public librarian at Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore, and she brought reading to all ages. Now, if you live near Baltimore, you know the Enoch Pratt Library because it's the state library. She started Mystery Loves Company Booksellers in Baltimore in 1991, and when she and her husband moved to Maryland's Eastern Shore in 2005, she decided to move the store to Oxford. Now, I'm going to let her tell you the details, but suffice it to say that her bookstore has survived 31 years, even in a tiny town called Oxford. Now, aside from her persistence to offer real value to her customers, she enjoys what she is doing. And at 74, she wants to keep working as long as she can, doing what she loves. I'm always happy when I meet someone who ignores the norms of age and just continues on bringing not just her energy, but also her wisdom to the world. So again, Kathy, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you, Madeline. It's really a pleasure to be able to talk about my favorite subject, which is books and people, and bringing them together. And that's what I do most of my life, have done for most of my life. Started out being a librarian, and then simultaneously with being a librarian, I was also the owner of Mystery Loves Company. And for 10 years, that worked okay. But then my partner, unfortunately, passed away suddenly. And I took over completely, and I had to leave the library biz if I was going to keep the bookstore biz going. And it was my love at that point, and I decided to do it. So I retired early, and I was in charge of that store for another 10 years till 2005. And 2005, we moved over to the Eastern Shore, which is about 90 minutes away from Baltimore, and decided finally to move the store to Oxford. Oxford is probably Shangri-La to most people who come here. It is founded in 1685, and so it has a very old heritage. It is completely surrounded by water. I can see water out of my back office from the store. Everything revolves around the water. People either sail or they fish or they sit by the water. We have the most beautiful town park, which is open to the public, and there's benches, and people from miles around just come there to sit and read. So it doesn't sound like it's all that unusual for us to have a bookstore here. When I moved here, of course, we were decided to be much more than just a mystery bookstore, which we weren't in Baltimore. In Baltimore, we were almost entirely a mystery bookstore, and we were a mystery specialty store, which was special too. We still are. There's very few people that specialize in mysteries specifically, but we also had to be a generic bookstore because there was no other bookstore in town. So coming from my public library background, I ordered the books that the people asked for, and usually ordered multiple copies because if they wanted them, that was good enough for me. And the titles eventually took over about 40% of the stock. It's still heavily mystery. Well, of course, we have local authors, which we decide to specialize in, and then local topics like books on the Eastern Shore and wildflowers and yachting, boating, nautical things, children's books. Children's books became very important. The demographics of this part of the region are up there in the 60s and 70s and above. And so a lot of people have grandchildren, and so they shop for the grandchildren visit them. And also, we are the only real, I hate to say this, real bookstore in this area. There are a couple sort of wannabe bookstores or places that have clothing with a lot of books in them, but they're not really bookstores. There's also a wonderful vintage bookstore in Easton. There's a wonderful rare bookstore there. And there's also one that has used books, thousands of them, on Route 50, a little bit farther down the road. But there's nothing really like a bookstore. And Madeline's right. That's the place where you really find curated books. You find books that everybody walks into the store and says, "Did you read these?" "Yes." "I did." "Well, how do you find anything?" "Well, I put it there." And then somebody says, my other question is, how is this organized? "So you'll buy it." So you'll pick it up and buy it.
Kathy, I know we have a few pictures of your bookstore, and I wonder, why don't we show a couple of these so people get a real sense that this is a real place, and I have even visited Kathy's store. So is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay, good.
Just don't want to frighten anyone.
I'll let you talk about these images, Kathy.
Okay, that's our logo, which was developed by a good friend of mine, and it's difficult to see, but it's two hands clasping, and there's a heart on one of the hands, and of course there's hands of a skeleton. And in the real version of this, of course, this is a Annapolis fire code sign that had two gloves clasping, and you had to have it on your house in order to get fire protection. You had to pay for this. So we saw this and we saw, that's really cool. We're going to do it with a skeleton and a heart for a ring. And that's our logo. So that's in front of Mystery Box Company. It tells you what our hours are. And it tells you also about our services. We have a monthly newsletter, which we've had for 31 years. We have online ordering. We have books new and used. And so it tells you our services, and that's in front of our store, which, however, you can see the next one too, if you'd like, is a bank building that was built in 1900. And it is so glorious. Everybody wants to come in and buy it. I will have no problem selling this building, which I own. It is gorgeous, and it has a beautiful tin ceiling. It has beautiful windows, and the sun is just permeating through it right now. It also has gold friezes around it, just like a bank building would, and it's very opulent, and we love it to death.
Well, let's see what it looks like filled with books.
Filled with books.
And
yes.
I want to take complete authority and claim that these photos are my photos. So if there's any problems with them or mistakes,
that's right.
They're mine.
They're gently, and the books are gently put on the shelf, and then unfortunately become disarrayed when people use them. So it's
and
everybody has to make their own selection.
That's right. Here's another one. And this is the one I like the best.
Yes. Those are all our, I've got a table similar to that now. Those are all our local authors of the moment who have brand new books out. And those are people who we like to support and have special events with, and in the store, and or pop-up events elsewhere. We also have a service that is much used where individual writers can ask us to go to their event, and we come and sell books for them off-site. So
excellent. Well, I'm going to suggest that we hold those other two images for a little later in our talk.
Okay.
And come back to us, because one of the things that I'm really curious about your perspective. You started in 1991. Amazon started in 1994. It was just 3 years after you began. And today, national bookstores like Borders no longer exist, but you do. So I'm really interested in your perspective on how you made the decision to remain in the business, even if it meant changing how you did it?
I think it's because you're dealing, when you're an indie store of any kind, independent, we call them indies, you're dealing one-on-one with people. And if you don't do that, Borders and Barnes & Noble never did. We were numbers to them or cards or something. But if you don't do that, you don't learn from your customers. And obviously Barnes & Noble and even Amazon were and Borders were not listening to their customers. They were not listening to what they wanted them to stock, and we're not giving them the service, particularly the complete customer service that you get with an indie store. So I think that's the main thing. A lot of it is, and that's the other part, is the down and dirty part, and that is they weren't capitalized well enough. All those stores weren't. They didn't realize how to have money put aside for lean times. They just weren't.
That's actually a characteristic of resilient organizations, is that they do have some financial margin that they can draw upon. Yeah.
And one of the things that happened along the way was we deal with an organization called Ingram, and I have to explain that. Ingram is our wholesaler. So if you go on our website, you're actually seeing Ingram's holdings that we can get for the customer and send directly to them. So they can't deal with a wholesaler. They have to deal through us. But anyways, we deal with Ingram. And the first thing I did, everybody says this is crazy, 1991, was I gave Ingram my credit card. I don't pay invoices. I don't have to have them breathing down my neck. And the reason I do that is because the first person that goes out of business is the person that loses their Ingram account. You can have all kinds of other accounts, but if you lose your ability to get a book for a person on demand, you're going to go out of business very easily. So it's not our business is not a stagnant business. It isn't just something that remains the same. We have to keep getting UPS orders every day and new things to come in. So that means that I have to have that wholesaler right there. For instance, somebody bought a book online this morning, and I could do what's a direct to ship order for them from Ingram and send it out to them from the wholesaler this morning.
Wow.
Without having to go to the post office or anything.
So you don't even have to do fulfillment.
Right. I don't even have to package it up. Now, that doesn't mean I do it with everything I do, but it's getting near to the holidays, and I just want them not to get lost in the shuffle. So
yeah. Wow.
So that was one of the first things I did. And then the second thing I did was we really curated the local authors, and we were there for some very big authors' first books to come out. People that you'd probably recognize. I'm not going to drop too many names, but particularly people like Laura Lippman and George Pelicanos, David Simon, Sujata Massey. There's all the Baltimore people. But then we got involved with a lot of organizations like Mystery Writers America and Sisters in Crime, which I was the vice president and president of for a while, and our local Chelsea chapter. And so I might know maybe 1,000 authors right now. And I know them to the point of, if I could call on them to need something, or if I need a panel put together, or not so much anymore, but for the larger conventions, although that's where I met them in the first place. So that makes it much more special. That's a reason to read their books. That's a reason to have a story to tell the customer about that book, because I know the author. Yes. So it's something that all kind of major, particularly mystery bookstores do, but it's something you don't even realize they do. It makes it so Barnes and Noble probably aren't going to know these people. They're not going to have heard of them. They open up a box. I was an Army librarian, and when I was an Army librarian in the 70s, we got boxes shipped to us. And we opened up the box, and there they were. And, we may or may not have heard of these books before, but that's what was going to go on our shelf. And so we are not like that. So that gives us an edge.
Well, I'm curious about one thing, though. You obviously love books.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what draws you or what drew you to books.
My father read and my mother read incredibly, and I think that's where it always begins. And I'm always thrilled. I was children's librarian for a while, and I was always thrilled whenever that child comes in and wants a book. And I get so mad at the parents sometimes because the child is really screaming out the door, but I want this book. And the parent says, no, we have to get ice cream. And I want to go, the ice cream will be gone, and you will be in the back seat, and your child will be screaming because she has nothing to do. So, it's
okay.
Pet peeve. It's a pet peeve.
But
I mean, the real great parents, of course, load them up on books and understand, and the grandparents,
yes.
and I often find, for instance, the other thing that's pet peeve is people coming in who are with other people who don't want to be there. They either, you can tell they don't read, or they've never been to a bookstore, or they don't know what to do in a bookstore, and they're just antsy, and they're with these other people, and they try to pull them out of the store before the other people are done shopping. So that is very sad too. If that's where we are today, that they don't even know what to do with a book.
I just love hearing it from your perspective. It's a different perspective. I certainly grew up in a home that valued knowledge. That was an education that was big in our home. There was not a lot of reading going on because we were farmers, and you have to spend a lot of time working on the farm. And that's where your attention was. But we valued education. And so when we finally got old enough and on our own, books came into our lives. And I say I'm talking about my siblings and myself. So, yeah. But you also focus on mystery books. And I'm curious as to what it was that really drew you to mystery books.
Well, there I have to fault my father. My father gave my mother, for instance, for a wedding anniversary, first wedding anniversary, I believe, the canon of Sherlock Holmes. And the canon is every single story that Conan Doyle wrote about Sherlock Holmes. It's bound in a great big volume of 3 or 4 inches thick. And he gave it to me. It was beside my bed. It's still beside my bed. I still read it practically every night, one of the stories. He did not, however, there's a backstory of this. He did not ever mention to me that girls or women were not welcome in any of the Sherlock Holmes societies. So I got into a situation in Baltimore with Mr. Love's company where I was asked to give the 6 Napoleons event at the Pratt Library their gift certificate from the store. And so I'm marching up the stage, and he says, I don't know that you can do this. This is in the 80s and 90s. I said, wait, what do you mean? Well, no women are really allowed in this group. Now, this has changed almost. There's some still outliers out there, and there's hundreds of Sherlock Holmes societies. There's called Scions. But is astonishing to me that that's the way it was. And eventually they were going to take my gift certificate, of course, but I couldn't present it. So that's changed now. But to get back to the Sherlock Holmes, so obviously I got that at a very early age. My mother loved mysteries. So I think that's just if you want to know the real origin story was that a bookstore called The Butler Did It was up for sale. She was going to go to Indonesia with her boyfriend. And she wanted to move the store. She wanted to sell the contents. She did not want to, for us to use the name. And a friend of mine and I were at a conference in San Francisco, and we heard this and went, in Baltimore, there's a mystery bookstore that's for sale. And they said, we've got to do this. And of course, I was still working at Pratt. I was the manager, branch manager. And we purchased the store. We purchased her stock, moved it down to Fells Point, which is a very fun, wild place down in the south.
Definitely.
Yeah, very, very wild. It used to be the dock, of course, where all of the terrible ships from all over the world and the sailors hung out. And it still has 70 bars. So we were there from 1991 to 2005. And it was exclusively a mystery bookstore. And it was, there was maybe 5 other things in it, but it was exclusively a mystery bookstore. And I had always had sort of Mystery Loves Company evenings, believe it or not, at the Pratt Library. And this was before I founded the store. So when I founded the store, I said, oh, I'm going to use that. So that became the name of the store.
Oh, this is interesting. When I was at the World Bank, I was responsible for creating a different library. It wasn't a general library. It was a technology library because my area was technology. And I remember when I hired this librarian to run it because I wanted it done right. And that's what she did. She would have Friday afternoons. She would have sessions where, coffee and donuts, and they talked about technology and what was the latest. And it was amazing how over the course of, I would say, just a year, we had really built what internal to the bank, nonetheless, but still a real live set of patrons who came all the time. So that technique is very powerful.
Yes, it is. And it was really interesting because we had a 3-floor library. And so we would have 3 separate venues of things going on.
Wow.
So it was lots of fun. I had a good staff and they were willing to work with me.
Well, now speaking of staff, do you have staff today?
Oh, that's an interesting story. I have 3 staff and all of them are like not here. My one is out sick and she just had a fall, so she's probably not going to be back for another whole week. And my other one is a part-time person, is a dog breeder. And if you know what's going on right now with Westminster and everything like that, she's very, very busy with doing that. And then this other person who I love in the door, she was 16 when she was here. And she was one of those employees that she worked for me all this past summer. She was one of these employees that you never had to tell her what to do. She would just walk in and do it and ask me if there wasn't anything else to do. And if there wasn't, then she would go find something to do. It was just, oh, please let her be here forever. Well, she went away. She went away to Ohio to college. And who knows if she's coming back in the summer.
Yes, I've had a few interns like that. In fact, I have one like that right now. They're gold.
Yes,
gold.
I want to mint them. Do they have siblings?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, shifting to a different topic, what trends do you see in the book industry?
Well, there's a big one going on right now. You've probably heard there's a Simon Schuster Random House fight, and they were just blocked by the merger. That's going to be very, very interesting. Although what that does is there's so few people think there's a lot of publishers in the world. There are a lot of little publishers, but there are only about 4 big publishers. And those big publishers are getting fewer. If you pull those 2 together, there might be 3 big publishers. Mm-hmm. And this means that what this means is there's an overall arching editor to this, and that person's decision is getting fewer and fewer and fewer as they go up. Yes, there's different divisions, and give your take that they're given some leeway in their decision making, but overall there's a philosophy, and we're talking worldwide. I mean, it's not just there's 3 worldwide. It's down to that. And it just is giving people less and less of a choice of what they read.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying, Kathy, about You looked at what the customer wanted to buy and
Yes,
decided that was what you needed to bring. Yeah.
right. And what's happened, of course, is the micro publishers have been burgeoning, as well as the indie publishers, and of course, print on demand by the author. That the
Mm-hmm.
author does their own publishing. However, what that means is that lots of times I can't get their books in the store because they're not available to me through the wholesaler. The individuals who make their books for whatever reason. Sometimes it's expense, and they do better selling them out the boot of their car or something. I don't know, but it makes economic sense for them not to use a wholesaler, but that limits the amount of product I can get. So lots of times I have to take those books, if I really want them, on commission, or somebody will send me a copy, or they will come in with a copy and sell it to me,
Mm-hmm.
that they want me to carry their book. Makes it harder, and it makes it harder for you to find out as a bookseller what's being published.
Interesting.
So it's very, very fascinating, and stuff's going to filter. It's just going to fall through the cracks. It's, we're just not going to see it because I have a friend who sends out a list of the books that are coming out each week, and lots of times 3 or 4 of those are not available from general distributors. So so somebody will come in. Do you have this book? Well, you're probably going to have to get it off her website, and it's just kind of defeats the purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, that gives me some real insight. I've published 5 books, and by 3 different publishers, including myself. And now I'm beginning to see there are certain positive things about it, but you're highlighting some of the areas that I have to look.
Well,
I have to do more research.
You're going to get lost or not put on the shelves of the indie bookstores, unless you make an effort to contact them.
Yep. Good. That's a great insight for me. Thank you for that. On another subject, historically, books have had an intrinsic value. I mean, I remember growing up, and you did not do anything to the book. You didn't dog ear it. You didn't write in it.
I still don't.
Today, we almost treat them as magazines because there are so many of them. I wonder if you give your little thoughts on that.
Well, I think some people do, but I think the people that I deal with don't. Very few of them discard them. They usually, particularly if they buy something in hardback, they intend to keep it. Sometimes they'll donate it to a library, but COVID has turned us away from all that. And when people wonder sure what the store looks like now, because I'll tell you what it looks like is people were dropping things off to me as though they were puppies. I mean, there would be a basket of them out in front of the door in the rain, because they got to the point where the libraries weren't taking them. They weren't having book sales. They really wanted to, now we do have a lot of people that are downsizing, and they have to, get rid of quite a lot of their books. And I understand that. But usually the people that come in are buying something because they want to keep it. So that's kind of different. Maybe not so much with the paperbacks. Now the other thing that's happening in publishing, of course, is the price of the book. There's a new, is it Stephen King? That's $32.99.
Yeah.
And that's a price for a fiction book. However, once again, if you're a Stephen King aficionado, you want to keep that book, and that's not that expensive. So, but that has got to come along, and I think people have had to probably, haven't seen it so much yet, but people are going to have to probably go back on how much money their budget allows them to spend on books.
That's right.
As in everything.
As in everything. You told a wonderful story about parents dissuading their children from reading books. But I
Right.
wonder how we can help children appreciate the gift of books in their lives.
Oh, I think they do once they have it in their hands. I mean, I've seen like, you know, a newborn, a board book excite a kid. So I think it's just, I was children's librarian for a long time, and I think just placing it with the child. However, usually a children's librarian also has sessions with the parents so that they can see the value that their child places on reading. And, there are some kids that are going to just, for one reason or other, either a medical condition or some other condition, are not able to enjoy reading. But I think that the ability, for instance, they have dogs that come in and sit there and while you're reading to them, and you read to the dog. I mean, there's just amazing connections that kids can find with books. And the more that they see the parents read, and the more that the parents read with the children, then it works out in the end. And I think the thing is, once again, they have to have that love of books. And sometimes they do, even though they don't like to read, which is very interesting. So,
Yeah.
they themselves are not readers, but they realize that their child is going to need to read and need to enjoy reading. I think the other thing you can do is not turn your child off by, and this used to bother me in Baltimore, a lot of the private schools would give these entering K through first grade a reading list. And these were books they had to read. And I saw these little kids with these backpacks. So going, oh, no. That's not what you do to them. They're going to hate reading.
Mm.
So it's really bothersome to me when you force, for instance, one of the things they did once was require the whole school to read a book. Well, I think it was Watership Down, and I doubted whether that sixth grader had any idea what was going on in that book. It was from 6 to 12, 6th to 12th grade. And I just thought, maybe he thinks it's about bunnies. I don't know. But I just don't think they got it, and I think that's the whole thing about what I do. It's got to be the right book for the right person at their right time. And it doesn't, Watership Down may be a great book for a 12th grader who's just into apocalyptic fiction or something, but it's not right for all people.
I wonder, on the flip side of this, your thoughts about the current banning of books.
Oh, gosh. Don't start me.
Well,
we're surrounded in Maryland by several counties that are into that. And my favorite one was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, if you know the book, it was written by C.S. Lewis, who is one of the greatest 20th century theologians.
Yes.
But they banned it because it had a witch in the title. Never reading the book, never having anything to do with what happens to the book or its themes or its, whatever. And it's not that would have helped any, because it would still be banned. No, I think you've got to allow, unless there's just something so blatantly violent against individuals or some other reason, you have got to allow the freedom to read. I mean, that's what all of library science is based on. American Library Association, the American Booksellers Association's creed is based on that. Yeah. So we will defend them to the death.
And alongside that, I loved your comments about the fact that a children's librarian knows the books that were appropriate not from a philosophy perspective, but from their ability to absorb and understand the book.
Right. I mean, you saw it with Harry Potter. I was amazed at it. I think Harry Potter got some flaws to it for one reason or another. But the idea that some child who beforehand was not going to pick up a book all of a sudden finishes something that was 350 pages, and they read it over 2 days or 1 week or something like that.
Yes.
That's got to be doing something to their ability to read. and get absorbed in the story and understand, as you said, the relationships, because I think that was very important what you said about fiction conveying so much more than people realize it is. And the fact that you can put down, we get involved with this a lot in the mystery community because people put down mysteries as being fluff and frivolous. And I think even in what we call cozy mysteries, and I know you don't want to get down the divisions of all this, but even in a cozy mystery, which is in a tiny little town, you're talking about the relationships between one another, usually very close relationships in things like trust or suspicion or all kinds of clues that would be in normal daily life. And it makes just as much sense to understand that as it does some great philosophy tenet or a religious tenet or scientific tenet, because you're talking about what makes interaction between people.
Yep. Thank you. I really appreciate that you took on that question. It's a tough one for us these days. You've been in this for a long time, and I wonder if there are really basically, what have you learned over the years about books, about selling, about the value of having fiction in our lives, which I think you've just talked on a bit, but I wonder if you'd expand on that.
Well, I think that books have a way of, there's something called, we deal in every day as a bookseller, more so in the library, but definitely a bookseller, is bibliotherapy. And that means that there really is a reason why you're going to enjoy or need this book at that moment in your life. And the fact that it really does speak to you, either you need to be frightened, or you need to be consoled, or you need to be soothed, or you need to find answers, or you're looking for some place to totally escape to because you're tired of where you are. Like we found that during lockdown a lot. You found everybody reading travel books from the day that they could finally travel. It was like, so what are you, it's not just like, I always ask them, what did you last read that you enjoy, if they're really stumped or whatever. But I also say, well, what are you feeling? What do you feel like reading? What would be the best book for you right now? Sometimes I can get it out of them. Sometimes they don't know, but sometimes they can tell me. But they'll walk in and say, oh, someone just passed away that was close to them, and I really need something to cheer me up. I have a friend, Donna Andrews, who's an author, very famous author of very funny mysteries. And I have a customer, several actually, who are undergoing dialysis, chemotherapy, and they take these books when they're having their treatments. They need something that is so out of their normal, what they're feeling right now, to get them to a better place and to get them to a positive attitude and see some humor in life. And that is very, very, and it can be given just like a prescription. And that's why it's called that. And it's you just have to know a little bit about the person. You've got to find out. You do what's called a reader's advisory session with them. You don't have to tell them what that is, but that's what it is. And you eventually get out of them what exactly they need to read. And then you have to know what your collection is, so you have to find a book that's, and even sometimes I will do something where I will special order a book for someone. I know just the book for you. I don't have it here. We'll get it in for you and I'll call you.
I loved your question. What is it that you feel like reading? I never thought of that particular question to ask. That's a fabulous question, because in fact, when we begin to go down into our feelings, oftentimes it's much more insightful than trying to use our head to logically.
Right. And I don't, some people are not able to, some people have never had that question asked them, so they're not able to answer it.
Yeah.
But so they need a little bit more help. But it's so much about knowing your stock, knowing your person. And I deal with about half the people that come in here I don't know. They're tourists.
Mhm.
So I probably, will not ever get to know them well. But, that reminds me though, I have this friend, very dear friend now, who twice a year I see, because she has a daughter down in Salisbury. She comes to see her. But she started out as a customer. And now
Mm.
literally every twice a year, all the way down from North Carolina, she'll come up and we'll spend time together, and she'll bring her family and they'll spend the day. And she brings books to me, and she tells me where she just got back from 2 trips to Compostela, two of them,
Mm.
2 walks in Spain and France. And so I mean she's just worldwide traveler, and that's someone who started out as a customer who's become a very, very good friend.
Oh,
So I
that's
know her very
fabulous.
well.
Well, I'm looking at the calendar and I realize we're getting very close to Christmas. And
Hmm.
I know that you, during this time, offer a nice discount in your store, a 10% discount in your store and online. So
Hmm.
that's a great, great incentive. Um, I wonder if you have any book recommendations for us today. I know
Sure.
there's some events in Oxford.
I've got both. First, the events in Oxford. We have coming up our annual Christmas on the Creek. We have a small creek in between us and the water, and it's called Town Creek. And so we call it Christmas Creek, and all the town docks, all about 50 of them, are all lined with Christmas trees, and they glitter into the water. It's quite beautiful. And then we have Santa come on the fire truck, and he lights the tree in Town Park. And then we're going to have caroling. There is something going on. All the churches. The firehouse has a firehouse breakfast with Santa, and then each one of the shops is going to have special discounts for all weekend, plus free refreshments while you shop. So it's a right, get ready for the holidays time, and very exciting. It's usually have a lot of candles lit outside, and it's everybody's decorated. Houses are decorated really
Oh,
nice.
that's fabulous. Now, I also want to tell people your website, which is
Mhm.
Mystery Loves Company, all one word, .com, mysterylovescompany.com. And
Mhm.
they're going to get their 10% discount there as well
That's
as
right.
if they come into
Mhm.
the shop. Fabulous. And you're also on radio. I understand it's
Yes.
WCEI
FM.
FM.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ah, so you are, I have to tell you, I think what you do is far more important than people realize. I don't think I ever understood what a librarian really was until I had to manage a library myself. And it was a real eye opener. To me, it was this place where you had to go to be very quiet. And that's the only association I had. Suddenly, my mind was just totally expanded that this is a real resource. And I think it's one of the things that in America, because we have libraries, free libraries all over the country, that's part of why I think we have the strength we have as a nation, because we have that access to
Mhm.
lots of information. Well, we are running out of time. I can't believe it, but we are. And so, Kathy, are there any final words that you would like to give to our
No,
audience?
but just remember, I have a phrase for you. It's on my screen right now. Cheers to all the small business owners working hard, long hours, tired nights, early mornings, and big dreams. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Keep going.
Oh,
And,
fabulous.
and that's the way I feel. And it isn't just me as a bookstore, although bookstores may have it harder than some, but all indie shops need our help. You get, believe it or not, 60% of your tax dollars stays locally if you buy indie. 60% goes back into the tax base of your local jurisdiction. And that's very, very important when it comes to everything else that you rely on from your services and goods from your county or municipality. And not only that, you're really, not buying somebody a yacht. You're actually keeping dinner on the table. You're actually getting your kids through school. You're actually, having them have a good holiday as well. So and you can see them, you can talk to them, you can relate to them. And I think that the whole indie movement, the shop small, we just came off of last week, Small Business Saturday. And that is such an important thing. It's only been 10 years ago it started, but it's such an important support that we get, that we can see we're getting. People really empathize with that.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Well, Kathy Harig, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom on this, what I think is an incredibly important topic. So thank you again. And
thank you, Madeline, for inviting me. It's been a joy.
Oh, good.
And come back to Oxford.
Absolutely. Wow. What a delight. As I have said, as I said, that the idea of a library being something that you really would want to go to, I just never understood that until I actually had responsibility for one. And then I realized what a gem of a resource that it has always been. And I can tell you that I have my library card, and my husband has his library card, and we use it a great deal, as well as going to bookstores. And as you can see, have lots of books in our lives. Again, I want to thank you for your time, your expertise, for being here and bringing us so much, Kathy. I talk a lot about highly resilient people, and often I've talked about the fact that they have in-depth knowledge, but there's another characteristic, and that is that they are insatiably curious people. They're always searching for opportunities that stimulate their curiosity. And as I was preparing for this show and listening to Kathy, I realized mysteries serve that function. They stimulate our curiosity. Who did it? And the author, the good ones, just give you little hints, and you're trying to put it together, and you're pursuing thoughts in different ways. So it's a real way to really stimulate your curiosity. And I never thought of mysteries as serving anything other than entertainment. But today I can see there is a real reason why mysteries are always popular, and that they actually bring us value. What a joy to know there is someone who can curate mysteries so that I am assured of a good read. Now that's real value. In addition, I have decided that I'm going to add to my practices that I talk about in my book and in my programs. I'm going to add read a mystery for stimulating curiosity. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Unlocked. And if you have, make a comment on social media about what you learned and might do differently as a result. And if you're on YouTube, click the like button. Better yet, subscribe to my channel so you'll always know what's coming up. You can learn more about the show on my website, www.madelineBlair.com/unlockedtv. It includes all of the replays of all the earlier shows so that you can go right to them. And of course, check out my book, Unlocked, for practices that actually work. And if you'd like to explore what it means for yourself to build and nurture your resilience, send me an email, Madeline@madelineblair.com, and I'll get back to you. And if you would like to join the group mentoring program called Unlocking Together, or are just curious about it, write and tell me that. I'll send you more information about it and keep you informed when the program begins. Thank you for joining us on this segment of Unlocked. I'm Madeline Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilience.